Just wonder if we were done yet.
No, we're still waiting.
Forgive them, they do not know what they say.
Yes, they do.
For that, maybe perhaps we should do an exegesis, now that the rabbi's here, verse by verse of what this means, because it's so scintillating to go through it that way.
Right.
Or maybe not. This is the last Sunday of February. We begin Lent on Wednesday. It's the last Sunday of the Sundays that follow the Epiphany, which is the time of light, when we have all our aha moments, and now we go into this Lenten season. On the first Sunday of the Sundays that follow the Epiphany, typically we will read about the baptism of Jesus. And on the last Sunday, this Sunday, we have Transfiguration Sunday. Now, you've all heard of Transfiguration. Do you want me to go into a long, detailed explanation of what that might mean to us in 47 paragraphs or more?
No, that's okay.
Okay. But the Transfiguration is that time. It's a mountaintop experience for Peter, James, and John, where they accompany Jesus. They don't know what's going to happen. And there's this incredible time of transfiguration where not only does Jesus become the light of the world in a real palpable way, but for them, it's a transforming experience, even though, again, Peter doesn't seem to necessarily get what's happening. But what's really neat about these two readings that frame those Sundays that follow Epiphany is in the first one, when Jesus is baptized, there's a voice from heaven that says, "Behold, this is my beloved Son, with him I am well pleased." And at this time, at the time on the mountaintop, the time of the Transfiguration, we hear an echo of that same language. "Behold, this is my beloved, my Son, with whom I am well pleased." So that's kind of neat parentheses that enclose for us this time that we are about to leave. But it's just before this, the Pharisees and Sadducees had asked for a sign from heaven that Jesus revealed who he was to them. And perhaps ironically, it is Peter, James, and John that get the sign from heaven, and it's revealed to them who Jesus is. And so part of what I wondered this week, and I know some of you read the passage ahead of time, maybe you've wondered the same thing, is have we had a sign from heaven? And perhaps a secondary question, what is light for us? What is transforming light for us? In this time of the Sundays following Epiphany, what epiphanies have we had? Now last week, you all wanted to talk. And Mary Zuba started it. And this week, nobody's raising their hand now that Stephanie put hers down. So I'm not sure if you had this sign from heaven, if you thought about what is the light for us, and if you have had an epiphany you want to share. Jill, you wanted to share something? What's that?
The little note that was attached to the balloon that I found on the property. That was a note from a little girl who had lost her father. She was sending up prayers to heaven. And to me, that was divine destiny, that we are here. We are meant to be here for this community.
So it was a sign from heaven? Is that what you were thinking? Okay. Okay. Who has that hand up? Stephanie?
Yeah, Stephanie's just fine. My epiphany was waiting for everything in my transplant for God's time, because I just couldn't imagine if I were in the process of healing when everything that's happened this past 7 months started happening. And God's time is something for us to really rely on and get used to recognizing that it's very, very by God's time, not our time.
Mm.
Mhm.
Well, when I think about mountaintop experiences, um, sometimes I think what become for us mountaintop experiences upon reflection maybe didn't feel like mountaintop experiences when they were happening. I was up early yesterday, and there was a PBS special on at 4, and it was about the life of Maya Angelou. And a good part of it was Maya speaking. She died in 2014, but she spoke about different events in her life. And one of her transforming events, and we might say, unfortunately, I don't know what she would say, was that when she was 7, she was raped and ended up in the hospital. And when she speaks about it in later life, she says, I don't want to say that I was brutally raped because all rapes are brutal. But when she left the hospital, she was sent to live with her grandmother. And for 5 years, she did not speak. For 5 years, she said, I read all the books in the black children's school library. And when I finished reading all those books, I read all the books they would let me read from the white children's school library. And I memorized sonnets of Shakespeare and entire plays of Shakespeare and other works from other writers. So that when 5 years later I was ready to speak, I had a lot to say. And if you've read any of her stuff, and I don't know if you know this, but she started out as a dancer and then became a singer, and from there, began to write. And first she wrote stories. She was friends with Langston Hughes early on, and then wrote the amazing poetry, which has been left to us as her legacy. And I don't know if you remember, but in 1993, at Bill Clinton's inauguration, she read a poem that she had written for that called On the Pulse of Morning. And she talks about the beautiful diversity that is America. And at the end of the poem says, maybe tomorrow we can just say to one another, good morning. The whole point of her life, I think, was to bring people together. But again, what started as an experience none of us would wish on anyone became somehow this pivotal time for what became an amazing life and an amazing voice. I think about other mountaintop experiences, and I think of our dear Julian, who no matter what was happening, never stopped coming here and trying to raise us up week after week, even if he had just gotten out of the hospital that day. Our mountaintop experience, our being transformed by another's light. I think of the incredible struggle that 3- and 4-year-old Logan waged against cancer, and how no matter what was happening, and if you see, because Kim keeps posting pictures at different times, that no matter what was happening, he never lost his smile. Something was happening for him where he was somehow at the Transfiguration, and his life continued and continues to transform our own lives. I think, too, as Black History Month ends, of the life of Martin Luther King Jr. And he wrote a speech on April 3rd, 1966, and you've probably heard the line from it. Like anybody else, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. We as a people will get there. Because he had a transformative experience that became transforming for so many of us these past 50-something years. Think about how young you all were, and I know some of us weren't born, how young your parents were, back in the 60s. Back in the 60s, when his life and words and voice became so transforming for so many. Now, the lines or the paragraph I just read you was preceded in the speech, which we've come to know as the mountaintop speech. I want to read you what preceded those lines. Several years ago, I was in New York City autographing the first book that I had written. And while sitting there autographing books, a demented black woman came up to me. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" I was looking down writing, and I said yes. And the next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon, and that blade had gone through, and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta. And once that's punctured, you drown in your own blood. That's the end. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in a wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and another the vice president. I'd forgotten about those telegrams. But there was another letter that came in from a little girl, and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at White Plains High School. While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering, and I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing you to say, I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze." And I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960, when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the Founding Fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to take a ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they're going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1963 when the black people of Birmingham aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance to be in Selma, Alabama to see the great movement there. I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around those brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy that I didn't sneeze. And they were telling me, now it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilots said over the public address system, "We're sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane. And to be sure that all of the bags were checked and be sure that nothing would be wrong with what's on the plane, we had to check everything carefully. We've had the plane protected and guarded all night." And then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out, and what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. What seems consistent to me as we think about these mountaintop experiences being so transformative is they all have in them this theme of death. Jesus came down and he said, "Don't tell anybody what happened up there till after I have been raised from the dead." He knew where he was headed. Martin Luther King says, "I don't know where I'm headed, but it doesn't matter because I've been to the mountaintop." I suspect there are many people in this space, and I know there are some, who have had their own mountaintop experiences. And they have been transformed. Because somehow in the darkest of times, the most difficult times, the scariest times, and the most heartbreaking times, there is still a light that is Christ. You're never the same after that experience. Not Peter and James and John, not Martin Luther King, not Maya Angelou, not me, not you, not us. All of us have been changed by Emmanuel, by the God promised to us and who promises us to be with us always. All of us have now been in the light and become the light. All of us have had our hearts transformed. All of us now have hands that are the hands of Jesus in this world, the hands of compassion, not the hands we saw in the cartoon for the kids. All of us are mountaintop people because God has touched each and every one of us in some special way at some special moment. And despite what was happening that seemed so incredibly difficult, we knew we were not alone. So I think the message today is we must continue to be blessing, even as we have been blessed and touched by our God. Amen.
Amen.